everyone. I'm Charlie Danis of Capital Athletics. Welcome to the Capital Women's Basketball Podcast here on athletics.capital.edu. The woman to my left, well, she's kind of a big deal around here. Welcome to Dixie Jeffers, the head coach of the Capital Women's Basketball Program. Well, Coach, 2 games into the season, 2-0. We'll get to those victories in just a moment. First, you went down to Harrisonburg, Virginia for the Eastern Mennonite University tip-off. How was the trip down south?
You know, everything that we wanted to accomplish, we were able to accomplish. Team bonding, a great environment, and just to be coming out with the 2 victories was really huge for us against 2 good opponents.
Let's talk about that first opponent, Bridgewater of Virginia. You beat Bridgewater 67-49. One of the young ladies that stood out in that game, Nina Napolitano, 16 points in that game against Bridgewater. When I say glue player, does that accurately describe Nina Napolitano? I
think it's a very accurate description. I know that in Saturday night's game, we were getting a little wary. Our legs were heavy because of the time that and the pace that we were trying to play at and so forth. And I remember calling the timeout and just saying, right now, you got to reach down and push through. And I turned and looked and saw Nina grab them all and just said, we are going now. So, yeah, I would say she's our glue. And the kid that they all feed off of one another. It's a very, very close senior class. It's a very close team, and they feed off of one another, and I can't be more proud of what they did this past weekend.
Second game, 73-54 win over East Mennonite. Jenna Erwin, she had a nice game, 18 points and 10 rebounds. We will be talking with her later on the Capital Women's Basketball Podcast. She's going to be an important piece, especially from the perimeter, I would say. She's
a huge piece. She's worked extremely hard. All of our kids, I can't stress that enough, all of our kids have put the out-of-season necessary work in, and they came back in great physical shape. They came back mentally good, and then now they're pressing to be even better. So they've worked really, really hard, and Jenna did a lot of good things, to the point that at one point we called a timeout because the way they were playing it, and we just changed some things up and just took the ball to her, and she answered the bell.
We're talking with Capital Women's Basketball coach Dixie Jeffers here on the Capital Women's Basketball Podcast on athletics.capital.edu. Well, one player that really stood out in those first 2 games, Kristen Thompson, KT, 17.5 points per game, 13 rebounds per game. In the last game, she goes for 21. What has allowed her to get off to this great start?
KT. KT's the person that's always stood in her own way. Unbelievable ability. And I think, you know, I changed up what we're running offensively this year, and I think the kids have really taken to it. It's more their style of how they want to play and so forth. And KT is very unselfish, and sometimes she's too unselfish. And we've talked to her about being a little bit more selfish and so forth. And she made some really good decisions and played really solid the 2 games, and we're just hopeful that she'll carry on that and get even bigger games.
One big change in women's basketball this year has been going from the 2 halves to now 4 quarters. What big changes or what big differences have you noticed so far this year?
The biggest difference is not so much the 10-minute quarters, it's the 2 free throws after 5 fouls. Free throw shooting is going to loom big, and we have put a total emphasis on free throw shooting, and we're doing a pretty good job of it right now, but we're only 2 games in. It's a long season, but that's probably the biggest part of it, is that, and they've kind of taken the more freestyle out and clamped down in the post a little bit more, and that's what's been interesting. They're either going to clamp on it or they're going to let you play, and this weekend we experienced some inconsistency both nights and so forth, and we experienced it from one half to the next half both nights. So you have to adjust really quickly, and I think the officials are going to have a difficult time with it this year, just like the players are, so it's going to be a learning experience for both the Stripes and the kids.
We're talking with Capital Women's Basketball coach Dixie Jeffers here on the Capital Women's Basketball Podcast. Ryan Gasser talked with you for the season preview and talked about the talented freshman class that's coming in. It's a really loaded class that will probably make a lot of big plays for this team this year. How do you think they did these first couple games?
Well, you know, our bench is a work in progress right now. For us as a coaching staff, we're still jockeying. But the biggest thing is we're so competitive in practice. And if we can continue to stay competitive, they're going to break the lineup. It's just when. It's not if, it's when. And our juniors and our sophomores can't take any day off because those freshmen are knocking on the door. And I will yield to the upperclassmen until they no longer can beat them. So our practices have been incredibly competitive, and that's what's going to make us a good team this year.
Your next couple games are a couple road games. Mount Aloysius coming up on Saturday, November 21st, and then another road game this time at Ohio Wesleyan. That'll be on Tuesday, November 24th. Ohio Wesleyan, you played last year. Mount Aloysius, a new team to the schedule. Talk about those opponents.
Mount Aloysius is very new. I'm actually still waiting on film. As of today, we're still waiting on film of them to come. So once I get that film, I'll be able to address it more in depth. But our kids will be prepared. As far as Ohio Wesleyan, I really don't want to discuss them because Mount Aloysius is our next person in line, next team in line. So we stay focused on that team. We're very road tested. We took both scrimmages on the road on purpose because we knew we were going into Virginia and we knew we were going to Mount Aloysius. So we want our kids used to getting on a bus and what our routine was and what it should look like and so forth. So hopefully we'll go into Mount Aloysius this Saturday and respond.
With these next couple of road games, you get to go into hostile environments. What are you wanting to see from your team in these first couple of road games, now that you're out of the tournament?
You want to see the bench come along and grow and so forth, and it will. We got great looks. Our subs got great looks. It was just the little things they weren't doing right. And if they can't do anything else, then maintain what we're doing on the floor to be able to rest the kids that we got out on the floor. I'm not worried about our bench coming along. That will come along just from repetitions and practice and repetitions and hopefully some games here.
All right, Coach. Well, let's end this interview with the random question of the week. This was a little fun thing that we got to do.
I always love the random question.
Okay. So everybody always likes to relax. They always like to get away from things, and they do this in a variety of ways. If you had to choose between going to the beach, camping, or taking a good old-fashioned road trip, what would you choose?
Oh, I'd be going to the beach.
Why?
Well, first of all, I didn't get to go this past summer for personal reasons, and parts of my family did. And I just love the ocean. I love the feel beneath the sand, and I just like being able to kick back. To me, that's a relaxing time. And just the people watch, I think it's fun at the beach. And it's where I find a lot of peace is being in the water.
I'm right there with you. Nothing like looking out of the water, having your toes in the sand. I mean, it's all good. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Charlie.
I was head coach Dixie Jeffers joining us here for the Capital Women's Basketball Podcast here on athletics.capital.edu. For Capital Athletics, I'm Charlie Danis. We'll see you next time. Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie Danis of Capital Athletics. Welcome into the Capital Women's Basketball Podcast. And joining me now is Jenna Erwin, a member of the 2015-2016 team. Jenna, thanks so much for joining us on the program.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning. How were you introduced to the game of basketball?
My parents have played all growing up. All the family has, so just kind of grew up with it.
You are originally from Springfield, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Take me through some of the highlights of your prep career.
Grew up going to a small school, but basketball is always, one of the big things for a small school, sports in general. So we had pretty decent teams while I was in high school. Did pretty well, gotten into the tournament a few years, so that's kind of how I kept going with my career.
When you were growing up, did you have any players or teams that you idolized?
Kind of idolized my mom and my aunts and everybody because that's all I knew. But growing up, I watched all types of basketball, college mostly, guys and girls.
What's your favorite moment from your childhood in terms of watching like those moments? Was there any big play that really stood out?
I always watched the Tennessee Vols with my grandma. She was a big Pat Summitt fan, so loved her coaching style. So I think that'd be one of the ones where...
Cheryl Swoops.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Those were really, really good teams under Coach Summitt. You end up playing at Cedarville University your first couple years of college ball, and then you transfer here to Capital. Take me through that decision process. What happened there?
At the time, I thought it was a great decision. I mean, I don't regret it no matter what, going there first. I learned a lot under Coach Martin, which I knew him from growing up. He coached my mom in high school, and he has a great program there. He's actually retiring this year, so ending a long legacy there. And then transferring, I think I just wanted a little something different. I grew up about 8 minutes away from Cedarville University, so I just felt I wanted a change. And I knew Coach Jeffers pretty long time, all my life. So just knew this was going to be a good fit for me.
We're talking with senior Jenna Erwin here on the Capital Women's Basketball Podcast on athletics.capital.edu. Well, it's your senior year. I know that it's a long way off, but what are the big goals here this year, your last hurrah, so to speak, here in Bexley?
You know, I'm just taking one day at a time, enjoying the time I have left here. I'm excited to see where my life goes after this. But yeah.
One of 5 seniors on this Capital squad. When you hear the word leader, what does that mean to you?
You know, for me, it's leading by example on our team. Being the person that our underclassmen can go to for any problem, whether it's basketball related or not. And just, you know, always doing the right thing for everybody.
You've had 2 convincing wins to start out the year. You ended up going down to Virginia for a tournament, a 67-49 victory over Bridgewater, and then a 73-54 win over East Mennonite. What was the big theme? What went right in those 2 games to start out the season?
Coach preaches, you know, we want to let our defense fuel our offense. So we kind of kept that as our main goal, you know, and fought through some pretty tough games.
One player that's really stood out so far this year has been Kristen Thompson, 17.5 points per game, 13 rebounds. She's a double-double machine. I know it's only 2 games into the season, but what's been going right for her?
You know, I think it's more about us in general. You know, we're really looking for each other. We're very unselfish, and we do, you know, look for her. She's a beast inside, so that's her thing. We're
talking with senior Jenna Erwin here on the Capital Women's Basketball Podcast on athletics.capital.edu. Ohio Wesleyan, of course, was a win for you guys last year. What do you remember about that game from last year?
I remember just it was one of our early games where we learned a lot from it, and hopefully we can, you know, keep going with our hardworking game plans.
You're one of the best shooters on this Capital squad, and particularly from three-point range. Describe for me that zone that a player sometimes gets into when the shot's going in, just everything is working during the game.
You know, you can't describe it. I think it's just my focus, I think, is one thing, and all the prep you do in the off season and growing up. You know, how do you practice how you play? So.
Before we let you go, I understand that you are a psychology major, and from other people that I've discussed this with, you know, I've known a lot of people that have studied that in college. You can go a lot of different directions with that major. What kind of direction do you want to go with that?
I want to go into studying some sports psychology.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, what leads you to want to pursue something like that?
Well, at first I was multiple different directions, but I think this is the one where, you know, I can do the most good in helping organizations and coaching staffs and players deal with things that sometimes athletic departments aren't always the best at, you know, being able to take care of, and also researching for the future of our sport too.
So you want to keep that same connection with sports going forward, even after your playing days. All right, Jenna, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
Senior Jenna Erwin joining us here on the Capital Women's Basketball Podcast. For more, go to athletics.capital.edu. I'm Charlie Danes for Capital Athletics. We'll see you next time.